Just how many linebackers will the Dallas Cowboys need to add this offseason? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 if your bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I am your host, Markquese Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we are breaking down the linebacker position from the Dallas Cowboys during the 2023 season, looking ahead to the offseason. And Landon, I'm going to start the show off with a take. a take. Ready?
Let's hear it.
I don't think the Cowboys are in as bad of a linebacker position as everybody else makes it seem like they are. I think they have three players who profile as like good number two linebackers. They just need to find that one guy, the veteran that can do a little bit of everything, that can get people lined up. And I kind of think this is a good year to find that player. I'm not down on the linebackers.
I think, the thing that surprises me the most when I look at the linebacker room is not so much the lack of talent, because I think you're right. I think that, Clark is a good player. I think Overshown could be a very good player. I think there's a couple other guys in this roster we'll talk about that are interesting. And actually, there's not a couple other guys on this roster, really, because there's only a couple other guys. Do you realize that there's only 4 linebackers really on this team right now?
It's Clark. Did you count Markquese Bell?
I think the question is that will the Cowboys, right? Because I like Markquese Bell as a linebacker, but the other part that's an issue here is that I think even with Zim, like you can play a guy like Bell at linebacker, but I don't think you can have 2 guys like Bell at linebacker, right? And that's my issue is that I think Clark and Overshown, Clark less so than Overshown, but Overshown is essentially the same player as far as body type and position type, right? So the real issue I have is that the Cowboys don't really have a between the A-gaps plugger, unless you want to count someone like Tyrus Wheat, who needs some development before he's going to be counted, that kind of thing. So I think the issue more than talent is they don't have numbers at the position.
So you're more of the belief that you think the Cowboys need to go out and get like multiple linebackers, or are you thinking they just need to get one starting caliber linebacker? Because the reason I ask is I think there's a lot of Cowboy fans out there, and please, we'd like to hear from you, that believe the Cowboys need 2 starting caliber linebackers and then let Damone Clark and Overshown be your primary backups who could maybe eventually take over one of those jobs.
Oh no, I tend to think like if you're playing with 2 primary linebackers, let's start there, right? I think the Cowboys have one, whether that's Clark or Bell or Overshown. I think
confident one of those 3 is going to step.
One of those 3 guys could fit that other role. I think the problem is that you literally do not have a body for the other body type of linebacker, right? Like, listen, Stephen Jones came out today, said, kind of kicked the ball down the field a little bit past the buck. I don't know how he's going to say this. Did not intentionally avoided answering questions about Leighton Vander Esch, right? And made it sound like, hey, Leighton will talk about his future, but basically, kind of implying what we've been implying, that it doesn't seem like Leighton is going to be playing, this year, maybe ever, right? We hope that's not the case, but go ahead.
It's a very delicate situation. I would be shocked if Leighton Vander Esch ever plays football again.
Let's say that. We don't love saying that, but I think that's very fair and realistic considering what's been going on. Considering that, right? The Cowboys have now lost, again, depending on whether you want to count Bell as a linebacker, the Cowboys have now lost 2 of their 5 linebackers just in the room, right? And the only guy that really probably could have played that kind of middle linebacker, A gap plugger. So I think the Cowboys have 1 linebacker, maybe even 2 if you want to play 3 linebackers. I think they have, enough to fill out a starting roster in those kind, but not a guy to play the middle linebacker at all.
Which is really weird because I feel like if they're playing 3 linebackers, Micah Parsons is going to be one of those 3 linebackers because you're going to want somebody that can rush the passer through the A gap. But if you're talking about like your traditional 2 linebackers in your nickel defense, I think they have 1.5.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem, right? Is that they've got 3 guys who can play that one position pretty well, but none of them that can. I mean, Clark's the only person who's even close to be playing that kind of middle linebacker, and it's just clear that that's not his natural position. He's just not instinctual enough, not physical at the point of attack enough. I think that he should be more of a run and hit linebacker. And the only reason he was in that middle linebacker is because he was the only one who weighed more than 225 pounds. So. I do think that the Cowboys need a linebacker, but I don't think that they need to scrap the whole linebacker room and start fresh.
So that was basically my thing. I think they need 1 player, like a 1B plus player on this defense at the linebacker position. I want to talk later in the show about the best way to acquire that player. But I actually like some of the younger guys. I'm excited to see what Overshown looks like because I know he's coming off an ACL. And those are always so tricky projecting, the year 1 off the ACL. But I do think he's got the speed and the range that's going to work well in this defense. And I think Damone Clark going into year 3, I expect his play to be better. And even Markquese Bell, if he needs to be your linebacker 4 or whatever you call him, I feel really good about him coming in and giving you 33 snaps if you need it in any single game. It's just, do you have that one guy that you can leave on the field in all situations and feel really comfortable that he's going to know what to do and he's not going to get you beat? I don't think they have that yet, but I love linebackers 2 through 4, which is a weird spot to be in.
And even like, look, I was joking, but Tyrus Wheat, I do think that like they paid him a ton of money in the offseason last year to be a draft free agent. I do think that in this situation now with Zim, I think he plays middle linebacker. I don't know that he's not your starter, but I think what you could do is that he could be a useful backup and a special teamer. So the reason I bring that up is I think the numbers are okay, despite the fact that you've lost 50% of your linebacker crew during the season. I think what you need is, like you said, 1 like B+ level A gap plugger middle linebacker, and I think you're in a good spot with your linebacking group.
Buddy Johnson doesn't do anything for you.
Not enough as no. That futures contract.
How about Damian Wilson?
I mean, he's not on the squad, so
I think they signed him to a futures deal. I'm pretty.
Oh, that's right. They did find it a futures deal. Well, listen, I think he's a guy that if you needed to, you could throw on the field, and he could. I mean, he's obviously played in the Super Bowl as a linebacker.
He's not factoring,
but he's not like satiating your need for a starting linebacker by any stretch of the imagination.
All right, let's talk about the players on this roster now, and then in the third segment, how they can improve this position in 2024. We will get to all of that next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. What's the first thing that you do if you had an extra hour in the day? Would it be going for a run, taking a nap, reading a book, or just showing up for a friend? A lot of us spend our lives wishing that we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so that you can do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for any reason at no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Just visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, Landon, we've talked a little bit about Damone Clark. We talked about Markquese Bell. I want to dive into DeMarvion Overshown, who the Cowboys selected in the 3rd round last year. It was a big bummer when he got hurt because he was having an excellent training camp, looked awesome in the preseason. But what can we expect from him in year 2, coming off the ACL injury, now playing in a new defense?
Well, first things first, it sounds like we got a decently positive review from Stephen Jones this morning when talking about the recovery time between him and Trayvon Diggs. First thing first for him is getting healthy, is getting back onto the field. And then, it's about the timing of it, right? This is a tough spot for Overshown to be into, right? He got drafted by the previous regime, in which he was a really great fit for. I still think he's going to be a really great fit in this regime as well. But it's going to be about learning a new system. It's going to be a little bit more complicated than the previous system. And he's going to have to kind of learn how to do it while still recovering from, the ACL injury that he suffered at the end of training camp last year. So he still isn't quite a year back from that injury. I mean, those injuries nowadays kind of take, 9 to 10 months before you can kind of get onto the field and do stuff. I mean, you certainly aren't, depending on the position, you certainly aren't, back to full strength until usually a year and a half after the injury,
about 18 months or so. Yep.
But you're usually back on the field about 9 to 10 months after the injury, doing something. You're cleared to play,
Yeah,
he'll be cleared to play, cleared to be in training camp. I'm sure.
And some of it just depends on the confidence level. Some players just have no. I think Michael Gallup is a good example. Like, was cleared a year after the injury, but he even talked about it. It was like 2 years before he felt really good about cutting on that knee. Other players can do it right away, and it's not a big deal. So it's really a player by player basis,
which makes this kind of a difficult, projection, right? Because he's doing all this stuff. He's recovering from an injury that is, notoriously difficult to kind of predict the exact return date, or at least a return to what you were used to before the injury. And, he's having to learn a whole new system. So I have very high expectations for DeMarvion because I think he's a great player, and he seems like he gets it in a way that was very clear when you watched him in training camp. But he still has a lot of things that he's got working against him that he's going to have to get through before we're going to get kind of an idea of, is he a pencil in for a starter? Is he going to be taking Clark's job? Like I kind of feel like, and I'm sure you agree, that Bell, Clark, and Overshown, like we talked about in that last segment, are probably all competing for a starting position, right? If we consider nickel defense to be the starting defense, right? So it'll be interesting to see exactly how much the injury and this kind of inexperience puts him behind the 8 ball behind Bell and Clark.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect. I kind of hope the Cowboys have the idea that they're not going into the season expecting him to start, but if he happens to win the job in camp, it's kind of like gravy, right? Like, cover your bases a little bit, so that way you're not having to rely on him the way that the Cowboys have had to rely on other players coming back from a torn ACL, like a Michael Gallup, or even a Terrence Steele last year. Like, we saw Terrence Steele in the first half of the season really struggled coming back from that injury. Now, I do think because you do have Markquese Bell, Damone Clark, and Overshown, you probably can maybe just rotate those guys some more. But I got to say, the Jabril Cox injury kind of scared me a little bit because he got hurt. It was as a rookie. And even Mike McCarthy said, like, it took him 2 years to feel like he was back to the athlete that he was before. And then we saw he didn't even make the team in year 4 because he was just so far behind the 8 ball. I think Overshown's a better player than that. But it is at least something to keep in mind when you're looking at this linebacker room.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the problem, especially for these young players that get these ACL injuries. They don't improve while they're recovering from an ACL injury. I mean, they may get some of the mental stuff down a little bit more, or spend more time in the film room, spend more time around vets, and understand how to be a professional. But as far as like physical football playing limitations that you have that you are trying to work through, you don't really get to like advance it. And Jabril Cox is a great example. Jabril Cox was a speed athletic merchant. He was incredible at covering running backs and tight ends. But his problem was that he struggled in the run game. He struggled to kind of be instinctual and get to where the football needs to be and getting off blocks. And guess what? When you're recovering from an ACL injury, you don't get to work on, taking on blocks from offensive linemen. You don't get to work on the things that you need to work on football skill wise, right? So basically you're frozen in amber until you're healthy. And then once you get healthy, that's the time that you have to get back to improving the way you want or the way you need to in order to get on the field. So someone like, Cox ran out of runway, basically missed 2 years because of an injury. And you have a 4-year deal on these contracts. So it's basically, a complete wash. That's the issue that Overshown's going to run into, right? I think Overshown is a further along developed skill-wise player. So I feel like once he gets back on, you even saw a player that seemed more developed as a linebacker than Cox was in training camp this last year. So I think he's ahead of where Cox is, but this is the concern for sure, is that you don't want to get to a situation where, he's basically starting his rookie year over again with one less year on a contract and having to do all of that while, having to continue to rehab from an ACL injury.
All right, I want to talk about Markquese Bell just really quickly because I got to be honest, this one is a little confusing for me because on one hand, this was somebody who made the transition in year 2 from safety to linebacker. And I'm gonna read you some of the stats from our friends at PFF. Okay.
Yes.
90th percentile coverage grade, 80th percentile coverage grade in the box, 98th percentile coverage grade in the slot, 75th percentile forced incompletion percentage, 81st percentile coverage grade with pressure, 90th percentile missed tackle percentage. He graded out as one of the best coverage linebackers in the league. And I understand the concerns about him in the run game. Actually, his run grade stuff was very average, but I think
it's not terrible. Yeah.
No, and it got overblown because of the defensive tackle play just wasn't very good.
Absolutely.
He's small. But if the Cowboys say they give him the full offseason to say, hey, we're leaving you at linebacker, just try to get up to 218 pounds, 220 pounds. I feel like he can do that. And I feel like he could be a much better linebacker. This is, again, for his first year ever playing linebacker, and he posted those numbers.
Yeah.
Why is Cowboy Nation so down on Markquese Bell going into year 3?
Because they have been misled about what the issues are in this run game. and I don't know what else to say. Like, I think that they've been told that the linebacker play is the problem in the run game. And I think in general, there are problems with linebackers getting off blocks, but maybe linebackers shouldn't be having to eat offensive guards every single run play.
And I don't always think it's a personnel issue either. I think a lot of it's a scheme didn't do them a lot of favors when it came to stopping the run. It helped them rushing the passer and in coverage, but when it came to stopping the run, they were exposed.
Quinn clearly made, I think he's basically admitted as much that he's made, a conceit to the fact that the pass game is more important than the run game. And so,
which I don't disagree with, by the way.
I don't either. But I think I disagree with the amount of surrendering the run game that they did. Like, that's the issue, is that they just basically ignored it and hoped it would go away. And it didn't. So I tend to think that Bell should be a major part of this defense next year. Like, I don't think that you should reduce his role after what you saw from him last year on very little time to get prepared for that position.
Well, it doesn't make sense for me to have him go be like the force safety again. Like, what's the point in doing that?
Carve him out a role. I don't care what it is. Like, make him the nickel linebacker, third safety. I don't care. Like, find a way to get him on the field, because he has incredible value in the shallow hook area as a coverage guy in man or in zone coverage, or as a guy who rallies to the football to make tackles. Like, I just think that he's too valuable as a pass defender on the second level to not play a lot. So you want to call him a linebacker, you want to call him a safety, I don't really care. But find a nickel package in which he is on the field and he's in coverage and making tackles. That's the ultimate goal for me here, is not to find a spot for Bell, but is to create a spot for Bell. Bell is the guy that you should be creating
He
a
should be
spot
one
for.
of
That's
the-
how good he is.
He should be one of the 14 players that you make sure that gets a lot of snaps on defense. Like that's just the way it should be. He's a very young player when it comes to actually playing in the NFL. I think he's 25 years old. I just have a lot of faith with how he was kind of raised in football and how he's got to this spot that he is going to take another step in year 2. We saw him get significantly better from year 1 to year 2. I think he'll be significantly better in year 3 as well. I want to talk, Landon, about how the Cowboys can upgrade this linebacker spot and the best path to doing so. We will discuss that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. I love betting on the NBA futures market. Listen, there's no football going on right now. Sit back, watch some NBA basketball, use the live same game parlays. It's so much fun. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. On tomorrow's show, it's a Wednesday, which means we are answering your Twitter questions. Make sure that you send them into us at McCoolBCB, at Marcus_Mosier. But Landon, let's finish out this segment by talking about how the Cowboys get better at linebacker. Do you think it's through the draft or through free agency?
Well, I just think considering all the things that we just talked about previous to this, right, and the kind of player that we're looking for and what the Cowboys are looking for, to me, it just makes a lot of sense to solve this in free agency, right? Because and maybe you do a little bit of both. Maybe you sign a guy in free agency and then you maybe draft a guy a little bit later too. I would be okay with that, but I just think that the idea that I think the issue is that the specific type of linebacker you need isn't readily available in the draft, and I think you could probably get the guy to do it, but you would probably have to overspend and you wouldn't get the bang for your buck for what you want, right? So I tend to think that you go out and you get a Bobby Wagner or a Aziz, what's his name from the
Al-Shahir.
From him, or Lavu from
Frankie Lavu from Carolina. Yeah.
From Carolina. Yeah. Like, I think these are all guys that kind of fit the bill a little bit. What's Patrick Queen's number going to be? Right. Like, I mean, is it going to be $20 million? Because if it is, no, thank you. But is there like a soft market for him? At least kick the tires. But I think I'm not necessarily interested in spending a huge amount of money. I don't think you need to spend a huge amount of money at linebacker in free agency. But I do think that free agency is this is one of the positions that when you look at the holes the Cowboys have, that I have just earmarked for free agency, because the choices are going to be better. You're going to get better. I don't know if bang for your buck. I mean, maybe it is better bang for your buck, because the truth of the matter is that to get the linebacker that you would need to kind of really move the needle on this team in the draft, you'd have to draft them way higher than you would feel comfortable. And frankly, there just aren't a ton of linebackers that are worth drafting that high. So you're probably actually getting better bang for your buck in the free agent market, and you're getting a better quality player who fits what you're trying to do more immediately.
I could see them going out and getting like a Jordan Hicks, who played for the Vikings, like 1 year, $3 million, but he gives you size and knows how to play in this defense. To me, that's like the floor of what you could do. What I would like to see them do is maybe get somebody with a little bit more upside. You mentioned Aziz Al-Shahir. I think that's a really good option. There's two guys that are really interesting to me, and I'm not counting Bobby Wagner, because I actually have a lot of issues with Bobby Wagner, but Josie Jewell, who is a free agent with the Broncos. We've mentioned him a couple times when it comes to the trade deadline stuff. 29, you're probably signing him to like a 2-year deal, probably 2 years, $8 million, maybe like what? Actually, I got to adjust it for the inflation. Probably like 2 years, $10 million. Come in, be the in between the tackles, thumper, make a bunch of tackles. He wears the green dot, do all that kind of stuff.
The Keith Brookings signing. Yes, we've done this before. Yeah.
Which honestly, That's okay. Like if that's
Yeah,
what you
absolutely.
do and you save your money elsewhere, I'm good with that. Like that makes a lot of sense. If you want to like take a shot here to try to figure out something, I'm really curious to see what happens with Devin White. I've not been a big Devin White fan, at least the last couple of years. I feel like he's gotten exposed in coverage and hasn't always known where to be. And he actually got benched in Todd Bowles' defense.
Yeah.
But he's only 26 and he can fly to the football. And he does have some size to come downhill and take on guards. I don't see the Cowboys doing that, but he's at least one of the more intriguing options.
Yeah, I mean, that to me feels like something where it's like, I'll let somebody else take that chance because
I agree. But I could also see like in 3 teams him being back to a Pro Bowl linebacker. I just don't know if that's Dallas.
I just, like I get some Roy Williams from him, right? Like there's like a Roy Williams, Darren Woodson thing happening between him and Levante David.
Yeah, that's a good comp. Yeah.
And I wonder if he doesn't have like a Roy Williams, post breakup type kind of fall. And I don't even necessarily mean the breakup between Roy Williams and him and Darren Woodson and him. But yeah, I think it's one of those situations. Do you get him away from this really elite player and his known problems get further exposed? That's what I worry about.
He's only 26 and he's
only 26 though. You're not wrong.
I know, but the thing is he was playing with Levante David last year and he got benched because he was that much of a liability. I don't know. That one's really tough. Patrick Queen is probably somebody that I would stay away from because he's kind of the opposite. Like really did not live up to his first round draft capital early in his career. Then once Roquan Smith came there, he was awesome. And like Roquan just told him, hey, go run to the football and stuff. I'm not sure if you're paying that guy $18 million a year in Dallas, if he's the problem solver that you need.
That's fair. And I think he is going to be a guy that is going to be paid a lot of money. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what his market is, but I'm certainly not interested in paying him a ton of money. But if the price started dropping, if the market is soft for free agent linebackers,
I'll give you one more that I think is like a 4 option. Zach Cunningham, who played with the Eagles last year.
Yeah.
I know he got exposed in coverage a lot, but he's 6'4", 240 pounds and can come down and play the run. If you just want one of those type of linebackers to at least have that mold in your locker room, he can do that for you. That's all.
Yeah. And look, we're looking for body types, right? Like you're looking for a bigger guy who can mix it up in the middle a little bit more. So, I think all of these are good choices for that. And, these guys are a little bit more rare than they used to be, right? So they're a little bit harder to find because the game's moving away from this a lot. It's a lot more speed guys, which, obviously with the passing game rising, that makes a lot of sense. So even though this is a position that doesn't cost a lot and that is not traditionally drafted very high, it's not always easy to find the right type of body because they don't exist in the NFL as much anymore.
No, they don't exist in college. I mean, these guys are 205-pound linebackers playing in college right now. So
the heaviest guys are like 245. You're lucky to find a 240-pound linebacker coming out of the
draft. Yeah, I think I looked at the numbers last year when we were looking at linebackers, and there was like 3 linebackers in the entire class over 235 pounds. That's ridiculous. Like that used to be like an undersized linebacker in the NFL like 10 years ago. You know,
just 10 years ago. So
I know
it's moved drastically.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.